Carole Landis was the sort of star who dazzled audiences with a single smile, her honey blonde hair and wide-set eyes exuding a sweet, almost innocent appeal. Yet behind that spark, Carole Landis lived a life of headlong leaps, bold, impulsive choices that shaped her brief but intense existence. She loved too fast, married too young, and died too soon. In a Hollywood teeming with bigger names, Landis remains an undercurrent of tragic glamour. The actress who soared on pinup posters during World War II, then plummeted when love and heartbreak collided. Her real name was Frances Ridstey, born in 1919 in Wisconsin, a quiet girl overshadowed by her mother's tumultuous relationships. She spent part of her childhood in small-town Minnesota, daydreaming about a life of riches and romance. She would say later that she used to sneak glimpses of motion picture magazines, vowing to escape her limited world. But no one could have guessed how swiftly she'd fling herself onto a track loaded with heartbreak. At 15, on January 14, 1934, she took the first reckless step. She secretly married Irving Wheeler, a 19-year-old writer who promised her a fresh start away from parental constraints. It was a teenage fantasy. Her mother, Clara, immediately demanded an annulment because Carole was underage. The marriage was undone almost as quickly as it happened. But in August 1934, once Carole hit 16, she and Wheeler remarried. This time it lasted 3 months, undone by accusations that she was already cheating on him. They parted in bitterness that November, an omen of the chaotic pattern of love and breakups that would mark her path. Wheeler later reappeared in 1938, suing Landis for a share of her Hollywood earnings, claiming he had discovered her. She settled out of court, keen to avoid more negative headlines, but the damage stuck. The press labeled her a girl who used men to climb upward, and that image stayed lodged in the gossip columns, painting her as opportunistic, a label that her future scandals would magnify. She pressed on, still in her mid-teens, determined to join the luminous swirl of Hollywood. She took random jobs: restaurant hostess, cigarette girl, even a chorus dancer in local clubs. By the late 1930s, she'd found her way onto studio lots, snagging background dancer slots, often uncredited. She was only 18 or 19, but her bravado and desperation to excel stood out. Then she crossed paths with Busby Berkeley, the brilliant yet notoriously troubled choreographer-director. He was in his early 40s, already famed for the swirling kaleidoscope choreography in musicals. She was awed by his creative genius, and he was entranced by her youth, her fresh face, and presumably her readiness to do whatever it took to get a speaking role. They began a clandestine affair. He was still married, though unhappily so, and rumor had it the difference in age was overshadowed by the intensity of their fling. Some claim that's how she nabbed small but noticeable parts in films like Varsity Show, 1937. She was forging a path, yes, but at a cost. People whispered that she slept her way into roles, tarnishing her carefully crafted on-screen sweetness. By 1938, Berkeley, unwilling to divorce or cause a scandal for himself, broke it off. Landis, left with heartbreak, told herself she'd succeed on her own. But that rumor, the starlet who used sex to get roles, would dog her in the years ahead. By 1939, Carole had changed her name from Frances to Carole, in homage to Carole Lombard, whose comedic spark she admired. She was also changing studios, searching for that big break. Despite the earlier heartbreak with Wheeler, she was still open to romance. And so began a string of short marriages that made her a recurring punchline in the tabloids. On July 4th, 1940, she married Willis Hunt Jr., a yacht broker from an affluent background, announcing it with patriotic fanfare. 4 months later, they split. The usual allegations flew: arguments, misunderstandings, accusations of infidelity. She insisted it was a mistake. The press snickered. Carole Landis has another whirlwind marriage. She forged onward with her film career, landing comedic or dramatic roles in B musicals and occasionally shining in bigger pictures. But heartbreak was always around the bend. In the early war years, she encountered Thomas Wallace, a dashing Army Air Corps pilot, and married him on January 5, 1943. She was in the midst of USO tours, entertaining troops abroad, swirling from stage to stage in exotic locales. The wedding sounded romantic, but it collapsed by July 1945, undone by the rigors of war, jealousy, maybe her unstoppable restlessness. Her pattern was unstoppable. That same year, on December 8, 1945, she married W. Horace Schmidlap, a Broadway producer with wealth and connections. This marriage stuck around in a technical sense, but she was so frequently away filming or traveling that it hardly counted as stable. By the mid-1940s, Carole had accumulated 4 husbands in 8 years. Tabloids nicknamed her the bride at large, or the only star who marries faster than she buys shoes. Though it was cruel, she shrugged it off publicly, but privately, she must have felt battered by the jokes. Meanwhile, the war provided a unique stage for her. She was among the first starlets to volunteer for USO tours. Between 1942 and 1945, she traveled across Europe, into the Pacific, performing for troops in comedic sketches or singing routines. She wrote columns for magazines, recounting how the GIs adored her, how she felt more alive in those camp shows than anywhere. But the rumor mill followed her, claiming she had flings with officers or indulged in wild partying. Some fans adored her free spirit, while moralists said she was loose. She responded by publishing 4 Jills in a Jeep in 1945, a breezy memoir about touring with Kay Francis, Martha Ray, and Mitzi Mayfair, hoping to highlight her patriotism. She posed in pinup costumes, her face gracing postcards that soldiers pinned to barracks walls. She was both a war heroine and a loose war bride, depending on which gossip rag you read. It was complicated, but for a while, she basked in the admiration of thousands of soldiers who saw her as a symbol of home, laughter, and vitality. That was Carole's dual existence, the star who couldn't keep her personal life from overshadowing her professional achievements. Then came the post-war slump. The studios churned out new starlets every month. Landis found herself squeezed in the competition for lead roles, overshadowed by bigger names like Betty Grable, Rita Hayworth, or Lana Turner. She found some success in comedic roles, but the industry was pivoting, and her name no longer conjured major box office guarantees. Worse yet, she stumbled into a romance with Rex Harrison in 1947 while filming The Foxes of Harrow. Harrison was British, suave, married to actress Lily Palmer, and rumored to be a shameless philanderer. Carole, thirsting for love, believed he might divorce Palmer and build a life with her. Their affair soon became an open secret in Hollywood. Harrison's accent and debonair presence dazzled Carole, who once told a friend that she'd never been so convinced that a man would rescue her from heartbreak. The press quietly whispered, "Yet another married lover. Doesn't she ever learn?" For a while she glowed with hope. But come 1948, it was clear Harrison wouldn't leave his wife, at least not for her. Desperate, she wrote him letters, pleas. He'd comfort her, then retreat back to Lily, who by all accounts was too wise to indulge in public confrontations. The industry frowned upon this messy triangle. People whispered that Carole's moral baggage was tarnishing her star power. Her final film, The Brass Monkey, 1948, flopped, exacerbating her sense of professional doom. She felt cornered. Her private life was in tatters, and she no longer had the acclaim that once cushioned her from vicious rumors. Around July 4th, 1948, she spent the evening with Harrison. Some sources say they had dinner at his house or at a restaurant, but the key is they were together. She insisted that he give her a definitive answer. Was he divorcing Lily Palmer or not? He refused to commit, perhaps urging patience or telling her to accept a mistress role. She'd had enough. She left presumably around 9 p.m., driving back to her rented home. The heartbreak must have been crushing, a final confirmation that he loved her body, her spirit, but not enough to blow up his marriage. She was 29, stuck in a marriage to Schmidlap she no longer cared about, with a career on the brink and a reputation so battered that studios hesitated to cast her. In that lonely night, she made her choice. She swallowed a bottle's worth of Secnal capsules, maybe 40 or 50, and left 2 notes, one addressed to her mother, Clara, apologizing for the trouble, the other to Harrison himself. The latter note never surfaced because Harrison allegedly destroyed it. Perhaps it contained pleas or accusations. We'll never know. By the next morning, around 11:30 a.m. on July 5th, her housekeeper, Florence Wasson, found her in the bathroom. She was already gone, arms limp, body unresponsive. The coroner determined an overdose of barbiturates. Carole Landis, the war pinup darling, the comedic star with so much promise, was dead by her own hand. She left behind a swirl of heartbreak, scandal, and suspicion. Rex Harrison's involvement cast an immediate shadow. The official version stated that he'd last seen her at 9 p.m., but neighbors swore they noticed his car outside her house at 3 a.m. If that's true, did he discover her near death? Or did they argue again? Why didn't he call an ambulance earlier? He only contacted the police around 2 p.m. on July 5th, an inexplicable delay. The press pounced. Did Rex let Carole die? The coroner found no evidence of violence, so there was no charge of homicide. It was declared a straightforward suicide spurred by romantic despair. But whispers lingered. Some believed he'd come in, found her dying, panicked, and tried to clean up any incriminating notes or references to Lily Palmer. He might have left, hoping she'd be found later, or that the overdose wasn't fatal. The rumor never reached a conclusion. Harrison breezed through the inquest with no charges. Landis's mother, distraught, filed a lawsuit claiming Harrison had caused emotional turmoil, leading to Carole's death. The case went nowhere. Hollywood let him continue on with his career. He'd eventually star in huge hits like My Fair Lady, overshadowing any memory of the tragedy. Carole Landis, on the other hand, receded into a footnote. The actress who died for love, overshadowed by a bigger star's wife, on July 10, 1948. Her funeral took place at Forest Lawn Memorial Park's Church of the Recessional. Over 1,000 people attended, including big names like Pat O'Brien and Cesar Romero. Harrison stayed away. He didn't want the media hounding him. Some found that heartless. Others said it was better he skipped the spectacle. She was buried in a favorite blue gown, a final piece of glamour for a woman who always cherished her outward elegance. She was 29. The subsequent days were a swirl of speculation and blame. Her mother never forgave Harrison, telling the press that he had essentially shattered Carole's spirit. Schmidlap, still legally her husband, tried to stay out of the spotlight, quietly acknowledging her death. Wheeler, the teenage groom from years before, didn't resurface. Busby Berkeley made no comment, overshadowed by his own subsequent controversies. The war she had so dutifully supported was over, and the soldiers who once adored her had moved on. Carole's estate, around $200,000 at the time, roughly over $2 million today, was inherited by her mother. No one can rewrite her story, but at least we can refuse to let it vanish. We can watch her comedic scenes, read about her war tours, and see the vibrant person behind the serial bride jokes. We can recall that, in the end, she was just a woman longing for love, undone by a system that devoured her heartbreak for headlines. In 2025, as Hollywood grapples with its past, Carole Landis's fate stands out as both personal tragedy and emblem of how quickly stardom and scandal can entwine, strangling a life that once shimmered with unstoppable ambition. She deserved better, but maybe by remembering her, we honor a measure of that loss. Her final hush was a sorrowful exclamation mark on a life that crackled with comedic potential. And so Carole Landis lingers, the star who married too often, loved too fervently, and left too soon, a cautionary figure flickering in black and white, brightening the screen before extinguishing her own light.